I recently read a news article on Santa Barbara County, California, and they went all in on the legal marijuana business. And as a result, fully 1/3 of the marijuana growers are located in that small county in California. And the people there now are no longer happy about it because the smell is pretty overpowering. And they forgot about the law of supply and demand. The more supply you have, the less the product costs, the less your profit is, and the less your tax revenue is. They also forgot to factor in that once they legalized it, people could just grow it and sell it without collecting the tax. And so it's kind of an example of the people there got what they wanted, but they don't want what they got, which is very typical of human nature. We think we know what we want, and we do all sorts of things to get it, and then when we get it, we realize, maybe I really didn't need this, or I really didn't want it. So the question I think the scriptures are proposing for us today is, what do you really want? And I'll tell you, one thing that we want is to get our way, and we want to do what we want to do, and we want to do what we want to do right now. And if I ask you, what do you want, you might come up with some really good things. But what is always in the back of our minds, driving our decisions, is that what we want our way. And we want to do what we want to do, and we want to do it in the way we want to do it, and of course we want to do it now. But, if we always do what we want to do, we wind up in the wrong place. Or if we always get what we want to get, we wind up getting in our own way. If we could do everything we want to do, we eventually end up in a place we probably don't want to be. And if we get what we want now, we might not get what we really want later on. But what we need to remember and understand is that lurking in the shadows of what we want is what we really value. And I say it's in the background because there is little in the culture that will focus you on what you really, really value. The culture dangles all sorts of shiny objects before us, convinces us that's what we want, that's what we need. And so we come to church, I think, week after week just to get a little bit of focus. Just to ask ourselves, what is it I'm searching for? What is it I really want? What is it I truly value? And so, the scriptures for this 17th Sunday. Jesus is talking about what matters and what is of ultimate value. He's asking us to do some values clarification. If we don't, then we might wind up getting what we want, but not what we really want in the end. And unless there's someone to focus you on what really matters, on what you really value, you're going to blow right past it, and you'll really know what you truly value, and therefore never get what you really deep down want. And I'm sure you could think back on your own life with all sorts of examples of things you really, really wanted and you got, and then you realize you really didn't want them or need them. I remember when I was 12 years old, I really, 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 really wanted a 10-speed bike. And I grew up in South Philadelphia. You cannot drive a bike very fast anywhere where I lived. But I got the bike, never used the 10 gears, maybe used the first, second, and third gear. And I realized this was kind of a stupid experiment. But I got what I wanted, and then I realized I didn't want what I got. And this isn't really, when you think about it, necessarily a religious thing. So if you're forced to watch via the live stream, you're being held hostage by a practicing Catholic who lives in your house, well, this is kind of for you too. You could think it through, because if you really want to get what you really want, what truly satisfies, then you need to really first find out what you truly value. And for us Jesus followers, we stretch it even further, because Jesus was always pointing people from what they wanted to what they ultimately wanted. And so how do we do that? Well, the first reading gives us, I think, our way through. God asked Solomon, "Ask me for something, anything, and I will grant it." It's like the $10 million question. And at this point, Solomon had just become king after the death of his father David. And his father David had ruled for 40 years. He was famous the world over. And so Solomon, as a young man, was filled with a lot of self-doubt. Can I really be king like my father? Am I up to the challenge? But the answer to the question God asked Solomon will reveal a great deal about himself. Just like the question I started with, what do you really want? That will reveal and tell you a great deal about yourself. And in trying to answer the question itself is a clarification of self. In answering the question honestly, you'll find at a deep level who you really are. But before we answer the question, we should study Solomon's answer and understand why it was the right answer. So Solomon says to the Lord, "Lord, give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people and distinguish right from wrong." And we're told God is pleased with the answer. Not because anything we do can change God or make God more happy or less happy. No, it pleases God. What pleases God is whatever allows us humans to flourish and to thrive. What Solomon is really asking for is wisdom, so that he could order his life according to God's will. And if he has wisdom, he will know what to do with any of the goods or the evils that come into his life. And so suppose he becomes rich. Well, if he is wise, he will know how to use and to dispose of his wealth. Or suppose his wealth is taken away. Well, if he's wise, he will know how to deal with that situation as well. Or suppose he conquers his enemies. If he is wise, if he has an understanding heart, he will treat his enemies according to God's purposes and will know how to handle his political and military advantage. Or suppose his enemies defeat him. Well, if he's wise, he will know how to handle that as well. Or suppose he's given length of life. If he's wise, he will know how to live that life well. Or if it's the other way, his life is cut short, he will know how best to live that short life. Or look at it the other way. If he had answered, "What I really want is riches, fill my palace to the brim," sure, there would be a brief, momentary elation from all that wealth and comfort, but in the end, his wealth would destroy him because he would not have the wisdom to know what to do with it. Same would be true with honor and power or a long life. It would be a short-lived happiness, but in the end it would turn on him. Think of all the famous people we hear about, we know, Hollywood rock stars, who ended up hitting the heights of fame and fortune. And they had it all, or so they thought. And it's not so easy figuring out what you really want, because there's a battle between human nature and what we value. It's a big deal because you might end up with what you want, but not what you really want, not what is ultimately of value to you. And here's the lesson. Following Jesus will make you better and make you better at life, because Jesus will point you to the ultimate past the immediate. He will take you beyond your broken intuitions, "I thought this is what I wanted," and our misguided perceptions. And so think about it during this week. What is it you really want? What is it that is of ultimate value? What is that pearl of great value that you will sacrifice everything for to get? And what is it that keeps dragging you away from that pearl, from what really and truly matters?